because it might burn your face off.
Yeah, there's that issue too. I mean, it already overheats, but now, yeah.
I mean, Oculus said that officially. They were like,
that is intense VR though. If it's gonna explode on your face, that's pretty intense. Like that's next level.
Are you saying it's a feature, not a bug?
I'm saying it depends on how you market it. All right, let's go live here. So we are Close to the Metal. This is our weekly show where we discuss different issues going on in computers, and we get kind of in depth on a lot of different things. And this week we are going to be talking about virtual reality, and just with all the different headsets that are coming out, there's a lot of different options that people are going to have coming up over this holiday season. You know, we all know about some of them that are out there, but there's so many different things. We need to narrow it down and get a little more specific, maybe answer some of your questions that you might have, and get in some details on what you guys would like to know about. So we're going to go through all of these. We want to hear your questions. If you're watching via YouTube, go ahead and hop in there. Give us your comments, your questions as we go. Matt is the expert. I'm Greg Nibbler, your host. And yes, Matt Smith here with us. Matt will be able to answer your questions. I will look at them and tell you how pretty it looks. But we do have a lot to get to. So let's start off with this. Let's take a look at what is on the market right now and maybe go through each one of them, talk about what you could buy, you know, this holiday season, and kind of go through the details. Do you have one you want to start off with first?
Yeah, I think let's just start with the gear.
Okay.
Because this is the simplest option, really. And this is an older one, so you know, some geeks out there might look at this and be like, "That's not the new model."
It is
You're
not
right,
the new
it's
model.
not the new model.
It is my old model that I have at home with the Galaxy Note 4.
Yeah, we didn't have the newer one around right now. So, but basically, this is the one where you stick your phone in it. Your Samsung phone, Galaxy, or Edge,
right?
Or we've got one example. This is one of the older phones here, Galaxy Note 4.
Still
so you have a Galaxy Note line or a Galaxy Edge line. Those are the ones that generally work.
And you have to have one of these.
Yeah,
to make
you
that
have
work.
to. You have to. Basically, the headset itself doesn't really. There's not anything in it really. It's just some basic electronics that enable a touch pad on the side and the lenses, and your phone provides all the processing power, and it actually shows you the games and whatnot.
Now, one thing with it, I mean, if you do have the phone, it's definitely a lot cheaper to get into this.
Yeah, that's kind of that's really the angle with the Gear VR. It's like this is self-contained and it's running off your phone. So if you have the phone, then it's not very expensive. The Gear VR, the most current version is like $100.
Yeah.
So you can buy that really cheaply. Now, if you don't have the Samsung phone, then you're kind of out of luck.
Yeah.
That it's basically going to be as expensive to use it as it would be to use one of the more advanced VR headsets. But if you do have a Samsung phone, and a lot of people do, then you're good. And you know, and it's not like it's definitely not as awesome as the more advanced headsets.
No.
But
it's entry level.
There are good experiences on it. Like
yeah.
you can play some fairly fun games, and then all the VR video live streaming sort of content, you know, that'll work as well on that as it would on any other headsets, maybe even better, because this does have the benefit of simplicity at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that some of the systems that they've had, or some of the live streaming content, like for sports, you know, they have a bunch of different things for the NBA that I've watched on this, that maybe if that's all you're interested in, probably this would be a much better option than going for the super high end.
Yeah, and it's pretty light. Not too bad looking, even this older version. And we move on to the Rift here. We can sort of do a comparison. You know, the Rift is a little bit more serious of a product. That it's bigger, it's heavier. Although since it's also designed by Oculus, these are really both Oculus products. The Samsung Gear VR is designed by Oculus, and you actually use an Oculus Store app to get apps to use with the Gear VR. But the Rift, you know, this is like...
But the Rift is the real deal.
This is the one everyone was really waiting for. And this is the one that's had, like, all the money put into it. And, you know, to make sort of a lame comparison, it's sort of the Apple, you know, of VR right now. You can definitely tell when you're looking at it that there's a level of detail into the design that other companies haven't really been able to put in to their headset. It's very, like... intuitive how the straps work. It's got a really nice look to it. It's very lightweight. And it's got built-in headphones,
It is, yeah. It's lighter than this even.
which some people like and some people don't. It depends on whether or not you have really good headphones. If you have really good headphones, you probably think it's dumb. But if you don't, you probably think it's awesome. But yeah, so the Oculus Rift is $600, but you need a PC to run it that's fast enough. And we'll get into that, what you need later.
So we'll get into those details.
But
$600 for this, just the base, the actual system.
Yeah, and for that $600, what you get basically is the ability to experience more in-depth games and content. You can use it. You usually use it with a controller, like a gamepad controller. Actually, an Xbox controller.
Yeah, I was going to say if that was an Xbox.
And technically, you can actually use the Gear VR with a controller too, but because it's not really part of the package, like most developers haven't developed for it.
Okay.
And because you're running off a computer, you get a lot better visual quality with your experience. And there's an external sensor that goes with the Rift that tracks your head position, so you get a lot better tracking of your view as you look around. It's very, very quick. I mean, you'll never notice that there's any sort of lag unless there's something wrong with the sensor.
So definitely a market improvement over.
Yeah, because the Samsung Gear VR, that's using your phone sensors.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, there's not a lot in it. So that's, those are pretty good, but they're not going to be as good as an external sensor that's like looking at your head and seeing where you're
actually
moving
tracking
around.
Everything.
And that's a nifty thing about the Rift and its design is it looks like this very solid unit.
It looks like you would expect a VR system to look.
But underneath, this is actually transparent fabric for infrared frequencies. So even though it looks like it's this really solid unit, there's actually a bunch of sensor receivers and reflectors in this headset, and the external sensors just beams that infrared, and it goes right through that fabric, which you think is like a solid.
Yeah.
And the end result is something that looks very complete and very nice and is very lightweight. And you can compare that to the Vive here.
Okay, so on to the HTC Vive.
Yeah, so the Vive, if you look at the Vive, you'll notice that it's kind of ugly. That's the first thing a lot of people notice about it. It has all these bulbous things on it, and actually what that is where the Vive's external sensors are looking at it, and they're tracking those little dents and indentations.
Yeah,
and
each
using
one of those
that
is a sensor.
Yeah, and using that as a basis of tracking where the headset is. Basically, I don't know if you've ever seen one of those behind the scene videos of special effects or something where the person's doing motion capture and they've got all the ping pong balls attached to them. Kind of the same idea. These are being used as the points of reference for the system. And on the Vive, that's all external. I have heard some people say they kind of like that because it makes it look like kind of geekier and more high-tech. This looks like something you would see maybe in a cyberpunk film, something like that. You're jacking in.
Yeah.
But, the Vive's big thing right now is that it has more advanced external sensors, and it has motion controllers that you use with it.
So it's a step above the Oculus Rift.
It's basically capable of doing that, whereas the Rift currently, right now, is not.
Okay.
And so you can have standing experiences where you're walking around a room, and that's really, really immersive. Downside is $800, so it's the most expensive
and that's
choice
just
out there right now.
For the system, again, let alone the PC you're going to need to run this thing. I will say with the Vive, you do get that full room experience because of the different sensors that you can set up, so you can walk around. What is it up to a 10 by 10 room? Or
I think the technical maximum is 16 feet by 16 feet.
Okay, so pretty immersive world if you have enough space and you can clear out for it.
Yeah,
that you'd be able to do
and,
that.
And that is a big space. Most people are not going to have a space big enough to use the Vive's to its full potential in terms of the amount of room that you can actually run around in virtual reality. So,
okay, so these are 3 different units that are out right now. So again, we're going through all of them and just kind of giving you the basics of this, and then we'll get into specifics of what's available, what you can buy when it comes to this, this holiday season, as everybody's starting to think about getting into VR if you haven't already. I know in a live chat right here, we've got John George. He's got Looks like he's got an Oculus and a Vive. Prefers, so
Well, lucky you.
You are right in it. So, but likes the Oculus, but hard to beat the hand controllers.
Yeah, that
Vive.
seems to be. I mean, that's been the consensus of everyone who's tried the two side by side.
Yeah.
It's just the Vive adds a level of immersion that's really above and beyond, and it's really what people think of virtual reality being.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the Rift is like halfway there because you're sitting down, but you're using a gamepad.
Yeah.
At least for now.
For now, as of now, we're not talking about too far in the future.
And there's also two other options we don't have on this table here.
Mm-hmm.
One, as you've probably heard of, is the PlayStation VR.
And that's not even out yet. So that's coming out in November, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
Ish.
I don't remember the exact date, but it's going to be pretty close to the actual holidays. And so that's coming out for your PlayStation. So
and with that brand new PlayStation that they're going to be having, the PlayStation Pro.
Yeah,
I believe, is what that'll be part of.
That's sort of the pitch with PlayStation VR. It's going to be attached to your console, as opposed to all the others that are either a phone.
The system does make you look
or
like a
computer.
blue Cylon kind of. That's a Battlestar.
It's it's a more friendly Cylon, maybe. I don't know. So the PlayStation VR is kind of going for it's going for price advantage and for simplicity, I would say. When it came out, Sony was like, it's like $400, but that's just for like the PlayStation VR, and you actually need Move controllers with it and other accessories to make it all work. So really,
you got
there's
that
this
camera too on top of it.
Yeah. So you need like a $500 bundle.
Okay.
So it's not like
VR.
like so much cheaper than the Rift necessarily, but the PlayStation Pro. And which you don't need, by the way, to use PSVR. This will work with PlayStation 4.
Oh, will it?
Or
Okay.
with PlayStation 4 Pro.
So you can buy it as an add-on for that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So potentially the overall cost to you could be a lot less than with a Rift or a Vive.
But we don't really know yet how good it is.
We don't. Yeah, and that's a big question, and I think that there's a lot of skepticism about it right now for two reasons. One is that the PlayStation itself just isn't that powerful.
Yeah.
So especially if you're playing it on the regular PlayStation and not the Pro, there's some skepticism about whether or not it's going to be able to offer the fidelity to really be impressive, or if it's going to be able to hit the frame rates to be smooth, because it's very important in VR that you have a high frame rate, higher than you would with the screen. Because with that being a virtual experience, your brain very quickly notices and cannot really accept lag.
Yeah. And
like when you're looking at a screen.
Right. And I mean, that was
fine.
a big problem with a lot of these too. Is people were getting motion sickness.
Yeah.
When they were first coming out because of the frame rate, right?
Yeah. So I would be a little worried about that. And that's the reason why some people are not too keen on it. We'll just have to see how it goes. Also, the resolution is a little bit lower of the actual display.
I just think it's weird with the PS4 that they haven't gotten them out in everybody's hands yet to start trying these things out. Especially,
There's been a lot of demos at like E3 and that sort of thing. We've tried it, and I think there's some split opinions. There's one writer on staff that like really loves it and thinks it's going to be awesome. Another writer on staff just does not like it at all. So we'll just have to see how it pans out.
Okay, but that is going to be an option that you can have there is the PlayStation VR. Okay, so looking at these four right now, there are some things, and I'm taking a look here at what we're going to talk about with the Oculus Rift, and that I believe somebody brought up in the chat about as far as the hand controllers.
Right.
Oculus does have a solution for that on the way.
Right. We should get into that. So Oculus does not currently have hand controllers, but they are working on that. They've been working on it for a while. It's called Oculus Touch. Very creative naming.
Like PlayStation
and it's pretty much the same idea as the Vive motion controllers. You've got these things you're holding in your hands, and those are tracked, and so you can move around and sort of interact with things more intuitively. Reaching out, touching them.
Which I can't emphasize how much of an advantage that is.
Yeah,
How much more
it is.
that
It is a
enhances the
big. It
experience.
is a big advantage. And the only thing about the Touch though is, as of right now, it's still like we don't know exactly when it's going to launch. We don't know exactly how much it's going to cost. The speculation is that it's going to launch sometime in November, and that it's probably going to be around $200, maybe between 150 and 250
to add on to the Oculus.
Right,
Yeah.
and so that means the Oculus is basically the same
Yeah, same price as the Vive.
as the Vive. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot for hand sensors to me. I don't know. That seems like it's a high price point.
Yeah. I mean,
Although if you already have it, then I mean, why not?
it does seem like a lot. I think it's the fact it's an add-on is going to make it a little bit of a hard sell. It should be said that the Touch. I've used the Touch controllers.
Mm-hmm.
They are not the same as the Vive controllers, even though they do basically the same purpose. They have some interesting things going on. They're a little bit smaller. They're a little bit lighter. They actually have a joystick rather than the touch pads, which I think some gamers will prefer because, I don't know, joystick just usually is a little bit more precise of a control than a touchpad. And they also have like this nifty loop that goes around your hand, and that's supposed to aid in tracking like what your fingers are doing. Although when I tried it, and this was last year at Oculus Connect 2, I didn't really see what was going on, like what the big deal was with that. It could be interesting. We're really gonna have to wait though till Oculus Connect this year for them to show it off, and I would imagine that is when they're going to do their big announcement for Oculus Touch
and put it out on the market. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so just kind of recapping what we're going through here, we're talking about different virtual reality systems that'll be available, for you to purchase this winter if somebody wants to get in. Gear VR, definitely an entry level, gives you an idea of what it is. Gives you kind of a rough idea of what VR is, the basics of it. I've enjoyed it, but definitely it's not going to be something if you really, really want to get into it, you want to step it up to probably the next level, which would be Oculus right now, and then the HTC Vive, which is kind of the high end currently that somebody can go out and get.
Yeah.
Now, performance wise, even if Oculus does come out with a Touch, will it still be able to match? Will it be able to match the HTC Vive at that point, or?
Pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much. The actual specifications of like the displays in the Vive and the Rift are pretty much the same.
Okay.
They both have pretty similar tracking abilities. The Vive has these really cool lighthouse sensors, and there's two of them with the Vive now. But Oculus has its own sensor, and you're going to have another one of those to use with Touch. Mm-hmm. So we can't really say without like getting to use both of them if one's better than the other. But in theory, they're both pretty much going to work the same. So it should be a pretty good level of parity. There's even been some developers talking about the possibility of just porting Vive games over the Rift once they have Touch, and saying that might not be all that hard to do.
Okay.
But that's another one of those things where I don't think we can really be certain until they actually launch the Touch.
Yeah, whether or not they'll be able to. And the sirens are in the background, in case you're wondering. It's not where you are. All right, well, let's talk about that as far as the gaming aspect, because if somebody's going to buy a VR system, like if I'm going to invest in it, definitely you want to be able to play some cool games. That's one of the main things with it. And how is the gaming right now for what we've got here in front of us?
Well, the Vive and the Rift and the Gear VR are all, and the PlayStation 4 when it comes out, the PSVR when it comes out, are all going to kind of be their own little self-contained worlds.
Okay.
Which is causing some controversy among a lot of gamers.
Yeah, because basically then you're stuck with that system forever.
Yeah. There's some overlap. There's some ability to port, but generally speaking, you're buying into a certain ecosystem right now when you get one of these headsets. I think that with the Samsung Gear VR, you have a lot of games that are pretty. I mean, it's the mobile system, and you still have sort of mobile games where they're more stripped down. They're not really even working with a controller. A lot of times, it's a puzzle game. It's just based on where you're looking at things.
Yeah, and the little touchpad.
And the touchpad, maybe you tap the side of your head. So you're gonna have like 1-2 buttons like to function with the game. Pretty basic. Can still be fun, but pretty basic. The Vive, it's getting a collection of some fairly unique indie games. I still really love Fantastic Contraption, which is a puzzle game where you build a contraption to get a ball over to another side of a map. But what's cool about it is you build the contraption in virtual reality. So you actually have to kneel down, put the part here, stretch it out, like using your hands with the controllers. It really adds a new dimension to it.
And that's an HTC Vive game.
Yeah, that's a Vive game. But there's also been a lot of other indie releases lately, and improvements to old ones. The Space Pirate Simulator is a favorite, and that's been out for a while. It's basically just a game where you're shooting at drones.
All right.
It's a high-score game. It's pretty simple, but they've actually done updates to it over time. It looks nicer than it used to. It has a high-score mode that's like multiplayer across the globe now. So, it's nice to see those little updates. Also, the Vive can work with some games like Elite Dangerous, for example, games that are sitting experiences.
Okay.
And what you could normally do on a screen. And that brings us to the Rift. The Rift, I would say, has probably less of the sort of indie experimental games going for it. But it does have some really good compatibility and really easy compatibility with a lot of games that are sort of ported over to virtual reality from...
Okay, so general games they've just kind of upgraded to...
Yeah. And it's usually cockpit games.
Okay.
And basically it just means it's a game where you would be doing something you would normally be sitting down anyway.
Flying in a ship, riding in a tank, or whatever.
So something like Project Cars, which is a racing sim.
Mm-hmm.
That on the Rift is a lot of fun. The controller works really well with it, or you can use it with a racing wheel. You have to sort of get acquainted by touch because you can't see the actual wheel you're using, but it is possible. And again, Elite Dangerous, that works really well. And personally, I think the setup of those sort of games with the Rift is a little easier.
Yeah.
But the downside is that in order to enjoy the easy setup, you end up having to get them through the Rift store, which not everyone's going to want to do because these games are also available on Steam, and a lot of people prefer Steam.
But if you get it on Steam, you can't use it on the Rift.
You can't. Well, you can, but it's.
Sounds like the gaming is definitely a complicated issue.
That's one of those
now.
complicated issues, yeah. And one of the reasons why it's still probably more for geeks than for everyone. Yeah. At least on the high-end systems.
Yeah. So Rift's got its own store. Vive's got its own store. Gear's got its own store.
Yeah, then PlayStation, of course, is going to have its own experiences to go with PlayStation.
Will have its own.
And they're working on a bunch of games. I think the games are...
you would think PlayStation would end up being ahead of the game as far as variety of games.
Yeah, and they might be. At least, well, one thing you definitely say for PlayStation is that they have the brand names.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be a Final Fantasy VR experience. Now, might be terrible. I've heard that it might be bad, but
But if you love,
no one
Final
else
Fantasy,
has a Final Fantasy experience. No one else has AAA level, or at least AAA level brands doing exclusives for the VR headset.
Yeah.
So that could be sort of the PSVR's one of its edges, is the game selection. It's supposed to ship with a good selection of games. I'm not sure how many right offhand, but it's in the low double digits, and it's also going to have a demo reel available. So
that's good to start off with.
Yeah.
I mean, because you would imagine that they'll probably exponentially grow that. Just like you said, just have with their brand name.
Yeah.
If
it takes off, that's sort of going to be the key because developers want to make games they can sell to people. And it's a little hard with Rift and Vive being kind of smaller niche products, but PSVR has the potential to really get out there to millions of people.
Yeah, for an extra $100, you can have all of that on your system as far as the PSVR. That's going to make it a lot. I think people will be much more likely to jump into that, whether it's good or not. Because what's the risk? You've already bought the system.
Yeah.
Then just hop into it. Well, let's talk about the system. So again, we're going through the different VR systems that'll be available this holiday. We're talking about the Gear VR, HTC Vive, Oculus Rift, and PlayStation VR. But let's talk about what the requirements are for these different systems and what you need to actually run them. I mean, like Gear VR is self-contained. You need one of the Samsung phones. So you need a newer phone to run it, or a notepad, or something along those lines that'll work for it. But it's a self-contained unit. If you already have that,
Yeah.
then it's not that much more. It's $100 more essentially to get the Gear VR. But that experience is definitely on the lower end compared to jumping into something like the Oculus Rift or the HTC Vive, which does require you having a computer system capable of running it. So what
Yeah.
are we looking at for that?
Yeah, so the specifications for the Rift and Vive have been a problem for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Basically, at the very least, you're going to want a AMD Radeon RX 480 video card.
Okay.
It's about the least powerful one that'll run it. You could also, if you have an old NVIDIA GTX 970, then that also will be fine.
Okay.
But you're going to want something along that line. So if you don't have anything like that, you're looking at about $200 to $250 to put that video card in your system.
So that's in addition to everything else.
Right, and that's in addition to everything else. That's assuming you have a system that is going to work with the video card. Some people have an old desktop; it'll be fine. But I know also a lot of people just have a laptop these days, or they have some small like Dell mini PC that was $400 and they got it 5 years ago, and that's going to be hopeless. It's probably not even going to fit in the system. So the other thing you need to have a processor that's fast enough, something like a Core i5, 4500, 4590, something along those lines. Something that's Core i5, Intel Core i5 quad core, or one of the higher end AMD chips will work as well. So that again is something that if you don't have, that's going to be a costly upgrade for you.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's a real investment if you want to get into it.
Yeah.
And it is very, very cool. I mean, I'll say this: if you really want to try it, it's a great experience for the HTC Vive and the Rift. But that is a lot of money. You definitely have to be willing to commit.
Yeah.
Get into
Yeah.
this.
If you're building the system yourself, you can probably escape by building something around $600.
I think we have a graph. I don't know if we have a graph or something like that, but there's a whole article at digitaltrends.com too that you guys put together.
Yeah. But that's going to be like the bare minimum. If you're buying it, you're probably going to have to spend at least $1,000.
Wow.
So that's that's a lot of money in addition to the VR headset. Suddenly you're looking at something that's like $1,600.
Yeah.
Rather than $600. So that's
Yeah.
definitely been an issue.
That's a big.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
a big time commitment right there. Okay, so that's for that one. But you can build one if you really did want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So again, going through these systems, if you do have any final questions, go ahead and drop those in there on YouTube, or if you're listening via podcast, send us an email. So what do you think about this? With these different systems that are available, that are coming out, should someone, if they just want to get, like, say that they've never done virtual reality before, never been in, is this something they should jump into this year? Or do you think, like, in a few months, there'll be something more out there?
I would, if you're gonna look for the very high end virtual reality, like the Vive or the Rift, I would say wait.
Yeah.
I really enjoy the Vive, but it is expensive, and I do believe that next year, these companies will come out with something that's going to be nicer.
You think by Christmas of next year of 2017,
Yeah.
if somebody wanted to wait that long?
Yeah, I think the main thing we'll see is higher display resolution.
Do you think they're ever going to be, like, in the near future for the Vive or the Rift, will they be separated, like, from the computer aspect of it, where you don't have to be tethered to a computer?
Well, there's
Standalone
rumors
units.
about the Rift maybe working with the Xbox One.
Yeah.
Technically, that could happen, but it's nothing confirmed.
Okay. So as of right now, the systems run how they run.
Yeah.
And that's what you're going to be dealing
Yeah.
with. But you're suggesting to wait if you want to go on the high end.
If you want to go on the high end, you probably should wait. Now, the exception to that is if you already have a computer that can run these, then it might be worth it. Then you're not looking at the huge cost of upgrading your computer in addition to the VR. It's borderline. It's still a little bit like it's not something you're going to get and you're going to be coming home and using VR for 2 or 3 hours every day, like you might if you have a gaming PC or a game console right now. I mean, if that's the way you unwind, you might do that. You're not going to be able to really do that with VR. There's probably not enough content to keep you interested. But, actually, I would say the Samsung Gear VR, if someone has a Samsung phone, that can work with it. Or if you're planning to buy them a Samsung phone, I suppose, because I believe they are doing some bundle deals as well.
Yeah. Return your Note 7, get a new one.
That's not a bad way to get into it, really.
Yeah.
Because it's affordable. It will get you into all the live stream stuff. It'll get you all into the 360, experiences and all that kind of stuff that's coming out.
And for a pretty, $100.
Yeah, and you can run some basic games. You can get an idea for it. You can get a feel for it, and then you can prepare for next year, making the leap into the bigger systems if you're really interested in it.
But basically, so from what I'm understanding from the different systems that we're talking about that will be available, if you don't have a Samsung device and you don't have a PlayStation or want to get the new PlayStation 4, there's really not a whole lot of entry-level VR systems
Yeah,
available.
not really anything I would recommend. I mean,
Okay.
they're technically actually like this whole like galaxy of kind of knockoff VR mobile headsets of varying levels of quality. I wouldn't really recommend them.
Okay.
The biggest problem with a lot of them is that there's no like easy way to get the content. The content is a problem. So
stick to kind of the actual
brand
names, the established brands.
Potential wild card here is Google's Daydream. They have this whole VR project they're working on to get phones that will be sort of certified to be able to handle VR. But that's not like happening right now, and
So
that's something
somewhere
that's
down the
evolving.
line.
So that's another thing we'll have to see how that comes out.
Okay.
If it comes out well, then it might be something to consider for the holidays. But
Okay.
it's a little too early to say for sure.
Okay. Well, there we go. These are the different VR systems that are available. If you're wanting to get one, if you're just joining in on the video right now, you can go back to the beginning and watch all about it. We went through in detail. And, of course, you can subscribe to the podcast as well. Final question here from Jose. And I know you did touch on games a little bit, but he's asking, what are the coolest VR games so far? What's your favorite one of any of them?
Well, like I said earlier, my favorite one is Fantastic Contraption.
Okay, that is it.
I also, though, really enjoy the Project Cars and other car simulation games because I like those games anyway.
Yeah.
So having them in VR, it's pretty awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you can check out all of this too at digitaltrends.com. We've got a bunch of different articles on there we can go through and take a look. If you want to build your own system, there's a guide to do that. If you want to find out about the Gear VR, HTC Vive, Oculus Rift, whatever you want to find out about, it's all there on the website, so you can go there and get some more details. Thanks for tuning in. This is Close to the Metal, where we kind of go in depth on one subject every week, every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So if you have suggestions or something that you think that we should cover or you want to know more about, we might even be able to make it an episode. Just send us an email, podcast@digitaltrends.com, and we'll answer any questions that you have right there. And thanks so much for watching, you guys. We'll be back next week with another episode.